Calling to order the Woburn School Committee meeting for April 13th, 2021. Let's salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Could the superintendent please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm.
Here.
Ms. Cormier.
Present.
Mr. Lipset.
Here.
Mr. Kissel.
Here.
Mr. Morenin.
Present.
Dr. Wells.
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Present. So this is a public meeting of the Woburn School Committee. I want to announce that we are simultaneously providing live stream through the YouTube channel of the Woburn Public Media Station, and anybody that will speak before the school committee is agreeing to be recorded. So starting with the approval of minutes. Do I have any action on 3/16/21?
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Those meeting minutes will be published. Public comment. We did have one person sign up, Mr. Shukan. I will recognize you. Mr. Eric Shukan. You can come have a seat.
Seat I know all too well.
Mr. Shukan, if you could just identify.
It is.
Just identify yourself and your address if you want.
Good evening. My name is Eric Shukan. I live at 46 Quimby Ave in Woburn. I'm a teacher at the high school, a veteran for 25 years, and I'm also the first vice president of the Woburn Teachers Association. Although I come here today in a sort of a mixed role. First of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me be here, Dr. Crowley and Madam Chair and the rest of the school committee. Just to share a quick experience, tomorrow I go into the high school for my last Wednesday, remote Wednesday, 26 Wednesdays. And I want to say that looking back on the year, I've had discussions with my kids in my classroom, and they've had enough. They want to go back, is what I hear. So I feel like we did a good job. You guys are doing great, and I thank you for that. I've recently become aware of an initiative by the administration to offer an incentive for retirement for teachers. And that is definitely a good deal, and I understand that's on the agenda tonight. And I have some knowledge of the state of affairs because the teachers who are retiring are my colleagues, and so obviously we talk. And there is significant value for the district, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you guys are doing. I would just point out that I have direct knowledge that there is additional significant value if you were to modify the offer slightly. So I would just point you in that direction. If you had any questions or wanted more information, I'm sure that I could answer questions at some later time, or perhaps Dr. Crowley could. But I would just point out that I know that there are probably 4, 5, or 6 further teachers that might choose a deal if you were so interested in terms of retirement. So I would just urge you to keep that in mind during your deliberations, and that's about it. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shukan.
Very good.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Two Wednesdays, one Wednesday.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear from a teacher, but, recognizing the administration, it's nice.
Yes.
Student representatives. I see Faith Frandudo is zooming in.
Hi, Faith.
Hi, so my report for the school committee from the high school for this date. So the Leo Club Blood Drive, this is the third it occurred this year, took place today at the Crown Plaza Hotel. This is a modification due to COVID, but the club prevailed. Best Buddies will be holding a event this week, a movie night at the high school this Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30. And Miss Holland and Miss Stone are the points of contact for this event. Spectrum Club is planning a virtual gala this spring. Mrs. Pollard Ramos is the point of contact for this event. The Wedge athletic season will wrap up by the end of April break, and the spring season will kick off on April 26th. The spring season includes baseball and softball, lacrosse, wrestling, and spring track. Over 50 seniors tested to qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy this week and last week as well. Senior internships will start April 26th. Approximately 80 seniors are taking on this new opportunity. This was planned to begin last year, but was sidelined by the pandemic. All students completed their course selection forms. These were reviewed by the guidance department leaders, and they're working on sectioning. The 2021-2022 schedule will be built this spring with the goal of move-up day for current high school students on June 21st. And that concludes my report.
Well, thank you, Ms. Frondudo. Anyone have any questions for Faith?
Great job.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, to the Superintendent, to Faith, I know we heard from Mr. Shukian tonight about how excited the staff are about going full-time pretty soon. Faith, how about the students?
I would say that we are most definitely ready to get back to school and to get back to how things used to be, even though I think I can speak on behalf of my fellow students. It's going to be a little bit different because we kind of forget what it's like to go back 5 days a week from 7:30 to 2. So, but I think overall having that consistency in our schedule will definitely benefit us in this home stretch that we have until the end of the school year.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? None? Okay. Ms. Frondudo, we deeply appreciate you coming to the school committee meeting, and you can stay for the duration of the meeting, and you can deliberate on any topic and the agenda, but you just can't vote, so you're welcome to stay.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Good night, Faith.
All right, City Council Liaison, Mr. Michael Concanon, is actually at a City Council meeting advocating for the school committee. So I put him on the agenda as a habit, but I often forget to ask if he has a meeting. So we look forward to hearing from him next meeting. Reports and presentations of superintendent and staff. We will start with silver linings, which is appropriately the return to full-time in-person learning for
Yeah.
some students.
Yeah, so
Dr. Crowley?
as everyone knows, April 5th, the elementaries went back to school full-time. We've had very few, if any, hiccups regarding that full return in person. A couple transportation hiccups, which are things that during the first week of school are almost to be expected, but kinks are being worked out. I can tell you that kids look happy in schools. Teachers even look happy. Everyone's happy. And to prove it to you, I have about a 2-minute video. And so, again, the return to school has been successful 7 days in. I think Mr. Shukian and Faith pointed to the idea that April 26th, everybody's coming back full-time in person, and it's my understanding that everyone is fully on board. I want to give credit to, as I said in the past, the principals and the implementation teams and the teachers and the nurses and the cafeteria workers and the crossing guards and the bus drivers. None of this happens independently, and so all that to say, we're trending very much in a positive direction as it relates to our full return in person. So I'm looking forward to April 27, I believe, is our next meeting. So that will be the second day that the Woburn Public Schools are back in person. So I'll provide an update at that point as well. If people have questions now, I'm happy
Maybe
to.
another video? No pressure.
Yeah, another movie? Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Crowley. Any questions? Dr. Wells?
So, did you do the video yourself?
Um,
No, because you had, originally, one of your goals was to learn more technology. I didn't know whether you were doing that.
So, Dr. Wells, one of the nice parts of my position is I can have ideas
Yeah, that's right.
and then ask people to send pictures to Carrie Carpenter, who then makes the
That's
magic
good.
happen.
That's good.
So,
Yeah.
In other words,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
well,
I did have a quick, it was mentioned that wrestling's going to be a sport in the spring. I'm very confused. Like, how did, maybe we could get just the athletic director at some point to come in and talk. I don't know, it just seems bizarre when all the precautions we're taking, and so I'd just like to know how they plan on doing wrestling.
yeah, I
The 6
can't
feet
comment.
apart?
No,
6 feet? Yeah.
John wants a demonstration.
Yeah,
Mechanical arms.
or it might be like swimming where it's virtual, you're in two different places and whoever does that. So
I don't think that would work.
I know, just so we could just get an update
So
on that.
I'll put that as a future agenda item, Dr. Wells?
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. With regard to the school opening, how did the bus situation go in terms of, having enough buses with all the students going at the same time?
Yeah, so I can speak to that.
Yeah.
That actually has been, with the North Suburban, has been fine. We haven't had to add any buses at all. I can actually, the same person that made the video is the bus person, and so she's assigned seats to every single elementary kid, front to back, kindergarten in front, and every kid knows where they sit on the bus. We've not had any problems on the North Suburban bus to date. So that being said, at the secondary level, what we're going to do, since we have not yet opened, is to say to the kids, you get on the bus, you sit somewhere, that's your seat for the rest of this year. Because we don't know who would want to sit next to each other, or where people live. So that's going to be our approach at the secondary level, and just trust the kids to sit where they're supposed to sit.
And the other question was about the school lunches at the other, did we see a pickup, or did you get any feedback that the lunch program?
Yes, so after the first week of being in person, we have seen more lunches consumed. They're still all free through the end of the year. So we have seen that initial pickup. We expect that it will continue for the remainder of the year.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Any more questions for Dr. Crowley on turn to? Just Dr. Crowley.
Yes.
As a reminder, you're still looking at the COVID dashboard every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So I can tell you that the number of staff and citizens tested has declined every Friday. This past Friday, we had no staff positives. There were a couple people, community people, that tested positive through that testing. It's going to happen this Friday all the way to the end of April with the mayor, and we'll decide at that point if the testing needs to or should continue into May. The theory, operating theory a little bit is once more people are vaccinated, the demand for testing will decline, but it still need to have it. So whether that's done through the city or the schools, we'll know.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley. Mr. Lipsett,
And
you have a
just
question?
as a quick follow-up to that, I know some communities have seen increases in student positives and student quarantines. I wonder if have we seen any change in our numbers at all?
We've seen a decline. Yeah, so far.
Yep.
You know, I'd like to,
Anything can change.
right,
Mm.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Crowley. And I just want to say on behalf of the school committee, Dr.
I
Wells.
was just to follow up on that. I was wondering maybe, you want to send out something to, especially the high school students, because we saw something in Burlington, just to remind them over the break, try, maintain precautions so that they can come back to school. Because worst thing would be get prepared to come back, and then on Sunday night, they're getting a call from you.
Right.
If we just remind students to, keep it up. They've done a great job, and let's get through this together.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Wells. What I was going to say is, when I looked at that video, I just want to commend all of the innovative thinking. We saw students sitting outside, students sitting, far away from each other, and clearly that takes a lot of work. And I just want to thank our teachers and staff for really just tremendous creativity on behalf of the school committee.
Yeah,
It's
if I don't know where you park, but if you look out in front of Joyce here, there's a bunch of white dots, and that's all where kids stand, right? And so these kinds of things are, and the Kennedy Courtyard, you saw where all the kids were sitting, those are white dots. And so, it's pretty regimented where kids are. All the kids have at the elementary, if you want, being a kindergarten teacher is exhausting to think about, never mind to get them to learn where a kid should have lunch, so they practice where they're going to go have lunch.
Yeah.
So you're on table 4, seat 2,
Yeah.
and so, but it's been working, so.
Thank you. And the collaboration with the WTA, of course, has been instrumental in all this. So.
Great job controlling the weather, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can have all the rain next week.
No.
No, we need the rain, but we don't want it during the school week.
Ms. Cormier, did you have a question?
I did. I just wanted to ask, speaking of lunch,
Yeah.
how has that been going? I know Mr. Nickerson had mentioned they were doing lunch and then recess, but kids do have enough time to finish their meal and...
Yeah, so anecdotally, the feedback has been pretty good. Like at the elementary level, I think, you mentioned Mr. Nickerson and Malcolm White. I believe that he's asking kids to sit, to have lunch for 10 minutes of their time. After 10 minutes, they can go outside. But he wants to provide them, so that there's time to eat.
Yep.
They don't have to go outside.
I can confirm that that's true and that it's very popular among a certain second grade set.
And do we know, is that happening at all? Are they all following that model in the elementary, or?
No, so it varies because the size of the schools dictate how many kids could be out at recess at a time. And so I think whenever possible, they're trying to limit the amount of in cafeteria time and go outside. But you can't have like 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders all at the playground at the same time.
Right.
So again, it's variable by school. So I know, for example, at the Reeves, they have tree stumps cut. So when the weather's nice, the kids can go outside and sit on the tree stumps and have lunch. So it's still a controlled environment away from the playground. So, I guess that answers your question,
does.
but it's not, because of the size of the school, it can't be uniform.
Yeah. But they're all making it work.
They're all making it work, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you,
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Kissel,
what?
and then Mr. Lipsick.
Kids at all being allowed to go home for lunch? They live close enough?
At the high school for open campus, they'll be allowed to.
But none of the younger kids?
No.
I just happened, driving around the city, I just happened to notice some younger kids, and now they weren't middle school, on their bikes heading back to the school. I didn't know if the principals were allowing any of that at all.
No,
I know they used to, many years ago. But
Back when we walked barefoot.
I didn't know who
I don't
was
think
home.
anybody else were alive when they were doing
No,
Okay.
no, they're not, there's no open campus at the elementary school.
No, I know.
Yeah, but it's interesting, you meant, like, we're still running a virtual academy with 400
Yeah, it's
kids,
probably
so there
right.
could be kids
Could have been coming to pick up
riding their bike
Right.
during the day.
their homes packages.
So,
Within a half day.
Could have been their
Yeah.
physical ed period.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I want to get their food.
Mr. Lipsick, did you
And I
have a
just
question?
wanted to add to what Dr. Crowley was saying. Regarding this is, we've talked a little bit about the ways in which investment that we've made in previous years has helped us during this in ways that we maybe didn't expect. We've made some investments and improvements in playground equipment over the last couple of years at Malcolm White, with Linscott, and I think that's to a degree paying dividends as well. So I think remembering that for future future projects is reflected as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Mr.
to that
Lipset.
space.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, not to mention the staff.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Final
Just,
thoughts?
it's either perhaps the superintendent or Dr. B or Wendy. I know we were going to utilize some staffing from the club and the YMCA. Did we do that this week, and how's that working out?
Yeah, we have,
We have two contracts with the club and with the YMCA. I believe that we have 17 total staff. Not every staff person is working every day. They have specific hours that they're, because they have other schedules for their regular work assignments. Some are, some aren't, but they are certainly all here, and we're really grateful.
Yeah.
Made things really easy on us, because I think 35 total people, or 24 total people needed to be brought in.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, moving on to the early retirement incentive.
so I guess if I'll preface it. We have put out an early retirement incentive to any member of the Woburn Public Schools, whether it was a teacher or para, secretary, custodian, nurse, etc., with different tiers of incentive. So, I believe you've seen that offer. And we closed it yesterday at 4 p.m. so that we could do an analysis of where it stood. And I provided you a copy of where that was. We have five teachers and one paraprofessional that took the early retirement incentive as it was offered. And Mr. Alcanada provided their current FY22 salary, what the anticipated replacement salary would be, and then the savings. And the savings, if accepted, would be $173,554. That being said, so that's where we are. I can speak to comments made by Mr. Shukan should you want to go down that path.
I think so.
Yeah.
I would like to see it. I mean, is there something different that was proposed, or was it something?
Yeah, so, no, this was the proposal,
Yeah,
and
okay.
again, the savings is $173,000 with the people that have put in.
Okay.
The committee wanted to see the numbers and to vote to approve it. That being said, we've been very collaborative with the WTA throughout, and so last year, the committee, we offered the $6,750 that's in the contract in addition to that percentage. And so that ostensibly could sweeten, if you wanted to extend the timeline, it could potentially draw in a few more people, but it may not. I don't know. I'm just I'm kind of clarifying a little bit of what was said earlier.
The CBA with the school committee has an early retirement incentive built into it. And so one option you would have is to add that into the ERI. So the school committee ERI of a percentage of their salary plus the $670. That's an option you guys can take to modify the current one on the table, or leave it as is.
Okay. But we've already had a deadline for the.
We've already had a
Budget
deadline, so
process.
then you would
Okay.
also have to extend the deadline
Okay.
to cast the net again.
Okay.
Dr. Wells.
Any of the positions, do you think they're going to be hard to fill positions for the teachers that, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I'll make the motion that we approve the recommendation by the superintendent, and then if someone wants a second, then we can
Madam
discuss
Chairman,
it
just
further.
clarification, I don't think that was a recommendation of the superintendent, that was information.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion, we approve it as presented by the superintendent this evening.
Yeah, the superintendent didn't take any position on it.
No.
Okay, do I have a second on Ms. Mulrennan's motion?
Second.
Okay, so I have a second. And,
On the motion,
any
Madam Chair?
discussion on that? Yes, of course.
I
Mr.
know
Bennett.
the superintendent may or may not want to get into some of the comments or ideas presented this evening from Mr. Shukan, and if perhaps anybody wanted to amend my motion or your presentation or the offer. I know you said you could have comments to add, but if you don't want, I'm fine with the way it is.
There's a motion on the table, we should vote on it.
Well, we could, on the motion.
On the motion, I just wanted to see.
Could I ask, just for quick clarification of what precisely the motion?
Well, I know,
To approve as is.
To approve as it, okay.
That's the way it is. I second that for discussion purposes. I mean, I made the motion, it was seconded, so we're going to, a little bit of discussion, if not.
Are we approving what's been done, or are we adding things?
No,
No, we're
Oh,
Approving what's been done.
Motion's on the table to approve the ERI as written
Okay.
with the numbers in front of you, in front of me.
Right.
At 173,554,
Okay.
estimation, of course.
Whatever that.
So do we have any discussion on this motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. That motion passes. The ERI will stand, the deadline will stand, and the 6 people will be offered the ERI as written. Okay? All right. What's next? Oh, the budget, yes. Budget fiscal year 2022 discussion. This is how we're going to present it. Dave Dunkley will go first to discuss his requests. And then Director Ryan will go next for special education. And then Dr. Crowley will be our closer. And Ms. Falconato, I'm sorry, Dr. Crowley, then Mr. Falconato.
I'm in relief. And then
Yes.
I'm going to close it out.
Close it out.
Mariana.
Okay, so Director of Facilities, Mr. Dunkley is here to talk about his requests in the budget. Hello, Mr. Dunkley.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking me early. Before we get into the budget, I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank everyone in my department. We were essential from day one. We never left the schools. We stayed here. We worked every single day. Things changed for us, how we do business, and custodians and maintenance have stepped up, and they've done a tremendous job. Not only are we cleaning, we're sanitizing, disinfecting several times throughout the day. Guys have shifted their hours to accommodate the schools without an issue with the union. We got trained in last year to evaluate our HVA systems, and the maintenance guys had some issues that they had to repair, and they've been right on top of the ventilation, that we're moving air. And it's great to say there was no transmissions within the schools. And it's great to see full classrooms in the elementary schools, and that is a thank you to everyone, including the kids. Everyone has done a great job.
Well, thank you. Yes, Dr. Wells.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is, how is your custodial staff, probably used to having some overtime, and they probably didn't have as much this year? Was that a concern for them in terms, with no activities going on in the schools and things like that?
It is, mostly up at the high school.
Yeah.
And the middle schools also lost a lot of overtime because there's
Yeah.
no use of the buildings. And they count on that money.
I know,
Right,
yeah. That's too bad. But I don't know if it's possible, we're talking about summer school programs, if more custodians could potentially be hired during the summer and maybe help, make up some of that money. If you have people doing cleaning and then have additional custodians, for the classrooms and stuff, thinking about that. Just to, because I know people depend upon the overtime and things like
Well,
that.
I'm still planning on hiring summer help
Yeah.
this summer. We typically hire 12 to 14 college students.
Right, but I'm thinking more about our regular staff, because we're going to have more extensive summer school program, and potentially having some of the custodians that normally would be cleaning, maybe maintaining the building I'm just thinking, looking at ways to make sure, we can employ them as much as we can during the summer.
We'll make sure that the schools are clean
Yeah.
and the programs can function.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about the electrical bill? I guess it's we're running a little high this year, and maybe just explain the rationale for electric.
Well, I did a projection out, and I'm projecting that we're going to be at 1.1 million in electricity this year. I budgeted 1.2 million, and it's, again, when it comes to the use of electricity, it's very hard right now. We are running the ventilation earlier in the morning, longer at night. We flush the buildings out for 2 solid weeks during the summer. Our solar panels did come online late in November, early part of December, so I'm still trying to get a feel on how they're impacting the electrical budget. I have seen in the last few months the amount in these schools have gone down, but I'm still asking for 1.3 million in the budget for next year. And if you look back in previous years, I was 2019, I was at just under 1.3. The year before that, I was over 1.3, over 1.3.
Okay.
So,
And what about outside work, school, the grounds and so forth? What's your plans, for the summer and, like, we have the high school
Yes.
lot, and, just sort of,
I'm
any,
probably going to try to hire 12 to 14 students. And they typically do all the grounds work throughout the summer, and we do projects. A big project that they do is we push back. It's all the grounds, it just keeps encroaching.
right.
And we keep cutting back the brush and the trees and push back.
In the Harold Wyman, I think we used up what we got with the building in terms of grounds maintenance, right? So we have to add money in this year?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work over there.
Right.
And we did have to bring a contractor in
Yeah.
before school started to catch up and make the place presentable.
Because you've heard it from us before, and Madam Chairman's father used to mention how it was very important, how the schools look from outside, because a lot of people don't get into them, and what they see on the outside is their impression of them. So anything we can do to help.
Oh, definitely.
Yep.
It does start on the outside.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Well. Mr. Kissel?
The water fountains or bubblers, whatever the term is, are they off limits now? I know a lot of places, you go into malls and stuff, and they have the yellow tape across them. We allowing them to be used?
No.
Okay.
All the water bubblers in every classroom has been bagged,
Okay.
and they've been secured. Most of the water coolers have been also secured. We installed 20-something bottle filling stations throughout the district during the summer. We just bought some more, and Scally's putting in another 20 throughout the district, the bottle filling stations. The bottle filling stations also have the water bubbler, and those are being secured, so we're not using those right now.
But you're using the water filling stations?
Water filling.
Okay, I was going to say, what are the kids doing with the water? And obviously the checking, it's been a little while, checking of the
Right.
lead and different contaminants, is that?
Two-thirds of the schools tested this year. Once we get back after April vacation, I have a high school, and then 2 middle schools left to do. And I will get them done.
Okay. Just checking.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. The last meeting, there was some discussion of your possible rack body, gator, utility truck, vehicle, whatever. So that's one topic, along with all of your equipment, age-wise, what's new, what's old, what are you thinking about replacing, and how you're going to do it?
Well, down in the grounds maintenance, you'll see a huge increase of $93,000 in that line from this current year. This current year, I lost $60,000 through the budget cut for this fiscal year. That $60,000 is something that I worked with Mr. Aaliyah over the course of 10 years to slowly build up so that we could replace our vehicles. We started off first by leasing to own, and then we've gotten to this point where we had $60,000. So I'm looking to replace a 15-year-old dump truck that's sitting out back with a blown transmission. It does carry a sander. I'd like to replace that with a rack body, with a lift gate that also can dump, with a plow, and we'll put our sander back on that truck. Snow removal has now basically totally falls on us. The amount of help that we get from the DPW has diminished over the years, which it happens. So that's a frontline vehicle that I need to get back online. We were short a sander this year. The other thing I would like to replace is the gator up at the high school. You've all seen it out there. It's 13 years old. That's a frontline vehicle for the high school. That thing is used every single day. And that's almost $30,000 to replace that. With a plow, with a curb sander on the back.
Is that a sweeper too? Or
No,
vacuum or
no,
blower?
behind sweeper.
But no, just general equipment, snow blowers, whatever other yard equipment you might be using, blow, you know.
Yeah,
Are
typically,
they
in my-
getting old too, or?
typically in my budget, I replace 2 snow blowers a year. I just have that built in. We buy 2 new ones, and we replace the 2 oldest. Weed whackers and push mowers, they're basically, use them until they break. You know, we don't buy super expensive ones. They're not worth repairing. So that's how we work on those things.
So far, so good with the turf and the track, I guess,
Oh, man, it looks great, doesn't it?
and the goalpost.
Nice and yellow.
Yep.
And Mr. Duran is working on getting the lights replaced, because we have so many lights out in the towers. So we're working on that together.
Thank you, Ms. Mulrennan.
Thank you.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes, solar panels. So I know you mentioned we had a few. Were there some here as well as the Goodyear? How many do we have now? How many schools do we have solar panels installed in? And are we planning on any more going forward?
We have them here at this school, the Earl Lyman, the Goodyear, and the Kennedy. As of right now, there is no plans to do other roofs.
And we'll see how that is affecting the bills.
It's too early to tell. They really
In a couple
just go
years.
online.
Yeah.
The one at the Kennedy was offsetting the bill at the Goodyear school, and right now we have a $60,000 credit in that electrical account at the Goodyear. But I shifted that credit back to the Kennedy because we have the Goodyear has their own solar panels now.
And do we own those or those leased?
We own them after 20 years.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier. Any more questions, Mr. Dunkley? Could just refresh my memory on the capital feasibility study? What is that pertaining to again?
Well, you've heard me talk about capital before.
Yes, I know.
And we really need to spend $600,000, whatever
Yes.
it is, bring in an architect, an engineer to come in and go through my list and validate it.
Yes.
And it will be a bigger hammer for everyone to listen to. And that's a priority. The Reeves School, 21 years old. I can talk about the mechanical systems. You don't see them. Reeves School, they're sitting down on the original carpeting in the kindergarten
Yes.
rooms. That you can see.
So it's like general, going through all the schools and seeing what needs to be done right away. That's what the feasibility study will
It
be?
would go into and looking at all the surfaces,
Yes.
looking at the mechanical systems, and basically be saying, what's it going to take to maintain the school for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
And then the decisions can be made, okay, this is what we can do, or like in the Kennedy, let's get out the rest of it. Maybe the decision will be, let's build new, let's go for a massive rehab.
Right.
But we need that information so that we can make that decision. No. The
We can't
community
keep-
needs to make that
From your
decision.
point of view, we can't keep putting this off. It needs to be.
We can't put it off any longer.
Right. Because on February 29th, 2020, the school committee did a traveling caravan around all the schools.
And that was a great tour.
That
and
was
then
great. And then,
What
I
happened?
know. Yes, okay.
The momentum was there and it stopped.
Do you think, I've seen this list many, many times. Do you think you could reshare that with the school committee, your ongoing list? The one, yeah, just so we always, you've shared it with a million times, and I remember what's on it. But if you could just share that so we know where the feasibility study is going to be looking
As
into.
well as the city council and new members. of the city
Yeah.
council.
So, but I just wanted to make sure that the school committee heard
Yep.
that, yeah. Ms. Chisholm?
Thoughts on the old Wyman? I know this is something that people have been asking a lot about. I mean, how much money are we putting into that every year? What do we need to do? I know that the residents in the area are concerned it's not going to be taken care of, inside, outside. I don't know, do we hold on to it? Do we keep that? as a-
This is part of the feasibility
Yeah,
study. We
right.
need to figure out what are our needs as a district, and then for each school. I envision the Wyman's going to be used.
Yeah. It's just a hard sell because for so many years we were telling people we couldn't put kids in there. We needed a new school. And now neighbors are saying, now you want to put them back in there. So it's, and I said, well, it's going to cost money. So that's a concern for taxpayers too. So it's, but, yep, so maybe we need to get this feasibility so we can sell it to everybody because it's the taxpayers that will pay for all this stuff. So,
It does. The community needs to be
Yep.
involved.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chisholm, for raising that point. Any more questions from Mr. Dunkley? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your kind words to your staff as your introduction. That means a lot.
They deserve it.
Yes, and please extend our support to them as well.
Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dunkley. Okay, we have Special Education Director Maureen Ryan. I'll refer the school committee to her presentation, Special Education Staffing Needs, fiscal year 20. That's in the packet.
Before we go to the staffing need, Dave commented on his staff, and I just want to commend Maureen and the special ed staff, because when we closed, special ed didn't stop, and so the needs are profound for our kids, dovetailing with coming back to school. So it's really a nice place to be, but it's been a very long 17 years, or 13 months, or whatever. So anyway, I just, because just to kind of contextualize it, because, we're sitting here and people come and go, but it's been a long time for particularly a lot of our most vulnerable kids. And so I just want to say that. So thank you.
Congratulate her about the review.
Oh, and
That's right.
I should also, thank you, the squeaky clean DESI review that was just conducted, which has never happened before. And so thank you to you and to Mike for this civil rights component of that. I think it really is a reflection on the work that is happening and the attention to detail that matters. And so, and the analysis that goes into all the decisions. So that being said, we'll talk about staffing, but any special ed questions that people may have, certainly we can answer.
All right, well, thank you for having me tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
So first, I know this is the common theme, but I did spend a lot of time in the classrooms over the past week or so. I read to a few different classrooms. I was in quite a bit. I was outside at recess on one day with Ms. Sprague, and the kids are happy. I mean, it has been such a long year, and the special ed staff have really stepped up and gone above and beyond and worked very, very hard. And when you see the smiles, it just makes you realize that it's worth it. These kids are happy, and that's, a big piece of this whole thing. So, okay, the staffing needs we're here to talk about. So the first one is the PALS classroom. So our PALS program is located at the Reeve School, and we are asking for 1 special ed teacher and 2 paraprofessionals for the PALS program. This program is made up of medically fragile students. They are students that are working on functional skills, and they need a lot of time with their teachers and with their paraprofessionals. It's really actually a fun group. When you go and visit the classroom, you can see the hard work that's happening there. The reason that we are adding a classroom is because we have now exceeded the age span for compliance. We have students in this program that range from kindergarten through age 5, and it's time to add a second class, both for educational purposes and for compliance reasons. This is something that we really need to do. So that one's pretty cut and dry. And, okay, the RISE classroom. This one, as you can see, I have an asterisk by the staffing requests, and I'll explain that a little bit. Currently, we are asking for 1 special education teacher and 2 paraprofessionals. This may need to change. I'm watching this carefully. The RISE program is located at the Shamrock School. It is our students on the autism spectrum. These students often use what we call AAC devices, alternative and augmentative communication. They are students that need discrete trial teaching, which is an instructional method that is 2-to-1 or 1-to-1. Many of these students have behavioral challenges. And what we're seeing in this particular program is that we have 3 students that are in the 5th grade that are moving on to the middle school, and we have 11 students coming into the kindergarten. So right there, we have 8 additional students. In addition to that, and I actually spent some time going through this today, over this year, we've had 7 move-ins, and at least 3, if not 4, have come in the past 2 weeks. Some of these students are not actually here yet. We haven't laid eyes. We're expecting a few of them to start right after April vacation. But from what I can tell, their needs are significant. And we may very well need to change this to open not 1 additional classroom, but 2 additional classrooms. We need to look very carefully at this. I'm working on the rosters, and we are planning it, but this is a fluid situation. The part with this that I think is important to understand as well is that if we don't provide high-quality programs for these students, they will go out of district, and we can provide for these students. We can educate them in the community, and there's an awful lot of value for everybody to doing this. And to doing it correctly. So we're working very hard. The RISE teachers are incredible. If you haven't been to the programs to see this group, it really warms your heart. It's take a book and sit down with them and engage with them, and you'll see what it's all about. But so this is a fluid situation with staffing that may need to change. We will see. Okay, next is the Elementary Learning Center support. So we are asking for 3 special education teachers here. Many people, I think, know that a lot of our schools still only have 1 special ed teacher, and it really is a problem. The caseloads at this time are averaging about 30 in the elementary schools. We really would like to see them closer to 20. This is a correction to help us balance off caseloads. And, when we think about the learning gaps for COVID and the literacy instruction that the students will need, the new Dyslexia Guidance, the components that I think of for the educators are that they have the appropriate instructional materials. That's number 1. Number 2, it's that they are appropriately trained. And number 3, they need to have reasonable caseloads. And this is really a significant component of it. We need to have lower caseloads for the teachers to provide the services that the students need. And, we have done an awful lot of work. I know at the last time I was here, we talked about the dyslexia, the guidance, and the programs. Our teachers are in process with Wilson training, LIPS training, V&V, RAVO, brain frames, you name it. We are doing an awful lot of great things, and this is really the last piece that we need to tackle. It will also help us to ensure equity across all of the schools. I think that's the other component, is at every elementary school, we want our students to have access to the same materials, the same learning, and comparable student-teacher ratios. Okay, in the Early Childhood Center, the request here is for 4 paraprofessionals. I did a little bit of research with neighboring districts on this, and our integrated classrooms currently have, and it's per regulation, 15 students. Woburn historically has had 1 teacher and 1 paraprofessional. So with the 15 students, there are 7 students with special needs. And when you visit these rooms, it's fun. there are 15 3-year-olds in the room. And if you can imagine 15 3-year-olds, 7 with special needs, and 2 adults, that probably sort of explains this request. But in terms of safety and contractual obligations, the other piece here is that post-pandemic, things are different. Diapering and taking kids to the bathroom is different. Snack time is different. The spacing and what you can actually do with children at this age, it's very different, and it is a very significant need. And then our related service providers have, again, gone above and beyond this year. This is really due to caseloads. It's a correction. It is trying to support the related service providers so that the caseloads are manageable and students have access to better services. Our SLPs, our speech and language pathologists, are now doing an awful lot of AAC, which is devices for students in the RISE program, programming devices, working with staff and teachers on how to help students and peers to use them. We have over 450 students in Woburn that have speech and language services in some capacity, and we're projecting 325 assessments or evaluations, which is also, it's time intensive and it's very important that it's done comprehensively. So that, the speech and language pathologist, that's a significant need. With the occupational therapist, it's very similar. Presently, we have over 90 students that are receiving occupational therapy services, and we are looking at over 120 evals. The needs that are coming in, again, are very significant. With the RISE program alone, we are seeing students that need related services at a higher frequency than what we've seen before. And then lastly, the social worker, that is a need at the high school. The TASK program has approximately 80 students, and there is currently only 1 social worker. This is needed just for service. It's social emotional needs of the students. Again, we would expect that there will be a greater need post-pandemic, but that social worker is necessary for the TASK program. And I think that's it. Any questions that I can answer?
Okay. Dr. Wells?
Yeah, thank you. So one question, space.
Yes.
So,
That's a good question.
yeah, so what's happening, what's your thoughts,
Sure.
or where are we going, or?
Sure. So this is something that I've had several conversations with many different people. And at this time, with the RISE classrooms that will be needed at the Shamrock, we will be looking at moving 2 of the early childhood, the preschool classrooms, to the Reeves. The preschool is presently split at 5 and 5, so this will obviously change that to 7 and 3. And that is right now what we're looking at. And, but space, it's a concern.
I assume that's not optimal, because if you split things, then, staff is needed, the support and so forth, so. Okay.
It's a concern. I've looked at many different ideas for moves. I've had conversations with the building principals on, every little space in the buildings to see. And, again, that also is fluid, and it is a problem.
So if this, the worst word ever, redistricting, I don't know whether to, free up class, because I think, best to keep the students that need all these needs in one building. So I don't know, down the road, we may have to look at, administration might have to look at that, to open up some more space at the Shamrock.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. The RISE program. So explain to me what happens when the students move out of that program into the middle school.
Sure.
Is there an analogous program there?
Yes. So in special education, we have what we call a continuum of services. And so those students would then go to the RISE program at the middle school. And so as we plan for these students, we will see that we need to plan as they move along the whole way.
And it seems like the pipeline coming in is more students And so that's just going to move throughout the system, I assume, so that
Yeah.
these programs are going to have to increase at the higher levels down the road, so we have to plan for that.
Yep.
Okay.
We currently have, between now and next June, 89 students in the early intervention pipeline that we'll be looking at. But we are definitely seeing an increase in students that are coming in with more significant disabilities, and that just seems to be the nature of it right now.
Okay. And then just from my perspective as a school committee member, when the superintendent told us about the review and how well you did, I was blown away, because I know these review groups come looking for issues. The fact that you did so well just instills so much confidence in your program, because that shows an attention to detail, and that's something we can see as a school committee, and so that just reinforces my perspective on how well you guys are doing with this program, because I don't see all the other things you're doing, but to see you do so well on something where you have to pay so much attention to detail, I'm just overwhelmed, because I was here when we had the report 3 years ago, and we were working on that forever. So I just want to congratulate everybody that was involved in that. That just shows a culture shift, and something we don't see a lot, and to see it is really amazing. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wald. Question, Mr. Lipson?
So just some of the things that you mentioned up front, just setting off a couple of alarm bells. I mean, you're talking about that we're currently seeing an age range that's pushing up against compliance, as in right now, this year?
No.
Okay, so
We're
for next
planning
year.
for next year.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's true in terms of the rise classroom as well, and the spacing?
I always look a year ahead at the cohorts.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're not facing any issues this year that we might need to.
No,
react.
we're absolutely not.
Thank you.
So Maureen can tell you every kid's birthday.
No doubt.
I do enjoy visiting the classrooms and getting to know the students. It's really very helpful when trying to plan. But yes, no, we plan ahead. We're rostering for next year. I'm moving pieces and.
Good to hear.
Any more questions? Yes, Mrs. Chisholm?
So out of this package, there'll be 16 new positions that you're requesting. So these are all already in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. So it's something that needs to be done, and, like Dr. Wells had said, when we're doing such a great job, we need to continue doing that great job, and we need to service these little guys and get pumpkins that are coming to our schools, and, they need it. And I do have someone that's been extremely happy with her son's progression. So I just want to say that, so.
The only piece that I'm keeping an eye on is the rise, and that is something, again, I need to have the kids arrive, and yes. So I'm working on that.
Okay.
Thank
Great
you,
job.
Mrs. Chisholm. Mr. Mulrennan and then Ms. Cormier.
It's not really a question, Matt, it's more of a compliment, Ms. Ryan. The RISE program you speak of at the Shamrock, no surprise that I had an opportunity to visit this week, and it's just the spacing, the room's on the corner of the Shamrock, so it's got light on 2 different windows. It's a bright, cheery room, and you're probably talking about the 2 twins that are in there, about children and getting to know them, and just see the environment in the buildings alone. But I think the work that staff are putting through in that Shamrock, and to hear you having even new little ones that are even a little bit tougher for the future. But I think I just want to compliment on that RISE program at the Shamrock for the challenges that your staff are doing. Again, you mentioned the technology, the way it's being integrated to the students. It's fantastic to see, so thank you again.
It's a very talented group, it really is. They work hard, they care about the students, and that they have exceptional skills.
You're fun. You just have fun.
Thanks, Mr. Mulrennan. Ms. Cormier.
Thank you. I appreciate when you mentioned, as far as the rise and the change in the population, how if we don't provide for them, they'll go out of district. And obviously, we're here talking about the budget, and fiscally, it makes more sense to keep the kids in district. But also just for the benefit of the kids, again, social emotionally, we're talking about kids who are going through the grades with their friends. If we can't provide them with the appropriate education, now not only does it cost the district more, but now they're uprooted I need to go to a whole new place and meet other kids, and that's a lot of disruption. So I appreciate your point about that, because it's something we might not always think about in that part. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier. Any more questions for Director Ryan? I'm not seeing any. Director Ryan, this was an amazing presentation, and it sounds like the school committee is in support of the requests. I remember last year that some of the caseloads that we heard about were extremely high. Can you talk a little bit about what adding more staff would do, and why lower caseloads is so important in this kind of situation?
Sure. I think a big piece of this is when we look at the circumstances of the past year, I would anticipate we will see an increase in referrals to special education. I would expect we will be doing more assessments. We will need to work very closely with the Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. And I think that there are some students that will have gaps. And in terms of caseloads, I think they're high. And pandemic or not, it's important to correct it, because our students need to have the best services that we can provide to them. And I do think that it makes a difference when our educators have lower caseloads. And also to be in line with neighboring communities, I think that's also important.
Do you think that Woburn has higher caseloads than other towns?
Yes, I do. I think our caseloads right now are a bit high.
Okay.
I think this will, should this budget pass, I think this will be a significant help in correcting some of it. But I think, if you look at a school like the Malcolm White or the Harold Wyman, and just simply look at the size of the school and think that there's one special education teacher, it's, we do need to change it. And I think it's the right thing to do for the students and also for the staff. I think we can do more.
Yeah, it sounds like you're hitting on providing infrastructure that's to be preventative in a way, like receiving these kids back into school to address learning gaps, but also addressing the actual need of kids that have IEP services.
I do think if we don't address it, we will, to Mr. Lipsett's point, end up with compliance issues. I think that we are just watching the trend with the numbers. I do think that if we don't, address this and get ahead of it, we will have a problem.
We could have a mid-year type of situation. Okay. I really appreciate your candor on that, Ms. Ryan. Dr. Wells.
So just to follow up with that, so if you look at our cohort, the DESE cohort, is our special ed population about the same size as our cohort, or so there's nothing unusual about Woburn in the sense of the size of our special ed. It's just
no. I think that we're where we should be.
Yeah.
The part that's challenging about looking at cohorts is the data is only as accurate as what is reported.
right.
We're really working and have made an enormous amount of progress in correcting the accuracy of our data. And it will take some time to cycle through. But when you look at other districts, sometimes you look at the data and you say, well, I know that isn't right.
Okay.
So in terms of where I believe we should be, I think we're doing well, and I think we are well positioned with all of the efforts and the professional development that we've worked so hard on this year to address the needs. I really do think our educators will be in a great place to start September if we can have students back in person.
Well, it's good to have accurate data, because you can't do planning if you don't. So that's good. So thank you.
Ms. Mulrennan.
Yeah, thank you, Manager. If you could, Ms. Ryan, just circle back to what we discussed at the beginning of your presentation, the recent review. I know it's you weren't here since the review came out, and I think we'll give you bragging rights right now if you want to brag a little bit about your department and maybe some of the services that you received this review, and maybe Dr. B did the same thing. You're kind of hesitant saying, they're probably going to get us on this, and here they come back with a review like they did. I just want to give you a couple of minutes to brag about your department, if you would, and that review itself.
Sure. So, everyone's been very supportive, and the addition of the compliance manager and the financial analyst have been extremely helpful. The restructure in the office has helped on many ways. Katie Holy is very by the book and strict, and the team chairs all worked very hard, as did the coordinators, and we have a special education procedure manual that is actually on our website, but we've really gone through and put together procedures that are in line with the regulations, and we're sticking to it. We're working very, very hard. There's been a lot of changes. I had a conversation with the team chair just this week about, well, this is how it was done before, and we reviewed the regulations and talked about a better way to move forward. There are always things that come up, but I think that it's a great team. People work very well together, and I am very focused on, understanding the regulations and making sure that all of the special education staff understand them as well. It's not we need to do this, but it's also why we need to do it. And we have a lot of procedures. Jen Judkins has been amazing at helping us to automate different things, which is really helping with procedures, communication, timelines, etc. And people have worked really hard, and we've worked collaboratively, and I think that's half the battle. So.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none? Good job. Charlie, you want to make any final words?
I just say thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your presentation, and I think it was well done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll now hear from Dr. Crowley on the education philosophies behind the budget, and then Mr. Alpinato will talk about the dollars.
Okay, so we're off to FY22 land. Again, this feels a little different than FY21 when we were on Zoom at home. So anyway, before we get to FY22, I just want to pump the brakes slightly and just reflect on 2018 to 2021, the last 3 years, because I think what you heard, and Mr. Lipset made the point about playgrounds, there's been investment over the last 3 years, not only in the physical structure, but in the personnel aisle, that has allowed us to manage the pandemic in a way I think that a lot of districts have struggled with. So we created the strategic plan, the blueprint, and that had the 3 objectives of equity for all students, consistent and rigorous curriculum, and professional practice. And in the 2018 budget, our budget was perfectly aligned with those 3 objectives. And then the next year we had the out-of-district budget issue. And then last year we had the pandemic. And so I'm saying that just to contextualize, we do have a strong foundation laid through to where we are now, but what I want to talk about is FY22 and setting up the next phase. So that being said, I'm going to click on this. You have a hard copy of this that you can reference at your leisure, but what I wanted to point out is that what we're trying to do is connect our budget to our blueprint. And so, for example, on the objective equity for all students, the focus areas over the last 3 years, we've increased social emotional support. That's the adjustment counselors, increased training for all staff around behavioral and social emotional health, and increased our connections within the community. And so we just bulleted points, a few of these things. Since the last meeting, last school committee meeting, we all sat down and kind of came to a level of detail as to what that would look like. And again, you have a hard copy of this. So in WPS 2018 to 2021, these are personnel positions that were added. the impact of those people being added, and then our budget proposal over here, and what the impact will be in FY '22 and beyond. And again, I printed out the hard copy of this for you, but I wanted, and I'll share this presentation with you as well, for those of you that are, that want to see it digitally as, so. So speaking specifically to FY '22, as it relates to equity for all students, and to ensure that all students are providing with a meaningful learning opportunity to build capacity, to understand, manage emotions, execute rigorous tasks, and make informed choices that promote wellness. When we get to the budget, you'll see that a lot of the budget requests are special ed, which you just heard, and EL. We've, over the last 5 years, seen a 90% increase in our EL population. So when we're talking about equity, you know, the budget aligns in this objective very easily. The SNAP Diversity Homeschool Connection, the investment into the family and community engagement position, trying to expand that a little bit coming out of the pandemic, makes great sense to us. The lead RSP providers, you just heard Director Ryan speak to the roles that they play, but having a point person will help increase the efficiency, not only to her, but also to families, so that families feel supported as we move forward. And the intensive literacy instruction, again, Ms. Ryan spoke to it, and Ms. Young spoke to it previously when we talked about the early literacy initiative and in their previous presentation. The objective 2, the consistent rigorous curriculum, again, to increase student achievement, providing authentic learner-centered experiences through aligned, consistent, rigorous curriculum with assessments that will allow students to demonstrate their understanding and prepare them for future success. Again, Ms. Ryan and Ms. Young spoke to the new Dyslexia Guidance, which was just released, I believe, yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. But we need to beef up our reading and dyslexia programs, and that was clear. I think Ms. Ryan did a great job making that case tonight. We've talked in the past about coaches, instructional coaches, but one of the things that I want to highlight is that the district and the city have invested nearly $1 million in technology in the last year, and we need to support that in an ongoing fashion. And so having some kind of instructional or innovative coach to help support the teachers makes a great deal of sense. The instructional leadership in content area for alignment and equity. So last year, if you remember, we cut the math coordinator position, and that was a tough cut because this year we've had Ken Mills, who's the assistant principal here at the Joyce, overseeing the 612 math curriculum. But what it does is it doesn't allow the math department to grow at the same rate as the ELA department, and it creates gaps. And so in the budget, we've asked for a couple positions so that everybody has an alignment and a place in which they're represented equitably. And we've expanded the arts over the past couple of years. That's happened, and we're hoping to push that again. And again, coming out of the pandemic, we have, I think, 14 to 16 intervention positions in the budget tonight. We're anticipating people needing more than they ever have. And the last objective is our professional practice objective, which is to hire and support educators to utilize data, professional development, collaborate continually to adapt practice to meet the best needs of all students. And so this is a pretty general objective, but one of the things that we didn't do, candidly, in the first iteration of our strategic plan was represent facilities and finance. They're not in the strategic plan, and so that was an oversight. So we need to do that in this next WPS strategic plan 2.0. But the feasibility study would be aligned with that. Director Ryan, Ms. Ryan talked about a little bit of professional development that is ongoing in the special ed department. Ms. Sprague can talk to you about the regular ed initiatives, not only this year, but beyond, because we continued to add new programs, and teachers need the PD to learn and to get better. The enhanced internal controls, I'm channeling my inner Bob Alcanada. But, we have to get better internally. So over the last 3 years, for example, we hired an HR person. So but we need to get better when we onboard people or when people come or they leave. So we need to continue to refine that practice. And the other thing that we need to look at is a review of the evaluation tool for all units. So that's secretarial custodian units, paraprofessional unit. Needs to be something that we think about in FY22 and beyond. And so I want to this is my last slide, but the return on investment over the last 3 years, I really think has been profound. I'm very proud of the work the Woburn Public Schools has done. I'm grateful to the school committee, the city, the mayor, for the investment that they've made. I think without the investment that was made over the last few years, the pandemic really would have created a significant, profound issues that we were able to address. So, for example, the content specialists and the curriculum coordinators, they were our virtual academy people. So we were prepared to handle a pandemic that we didn't know was coming. So I'm grateful to Mr. Alcanada, Ms. McKinnon, who's here and has worked hand in hand in the transition from Mr. Aaliyah to Mr. Alcanada. We've spent actually a lot of time right in this room working on massaging the budget. We'll get to momentarily with the real numbers. Again, channeling Mr. Alcanada's words, this is a moment in time. We're really happy with where we are at this time. I think it's reflective of our priorities moving into FY22, but also beyond, because we're trying to be somewhat ambitious in a way that we ordinarily might not be able to. But I think it sets a table for the next 3, 5, 10 years. And so that's where I will leave off, and I will unplug and allow Bob to take over.
Okay.
Before you do that, I just want to acknowledge Ms. McKinnon, who's here, and thank you very much for all your work.
Doing slides? You doing slides too?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Let me just blow that up a little bit more.
Can you see that, Mike? Your glasses on?
Yeah, I didn't wear them, but I'm sitting close enough tonight.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Crowley. What we'll do initially is what I call the budget summary of budget reconciliation, where we were on March 24th and at your last school committee meeting, and where we are now and what has happened in between. As Dr. Crowley references, a budget, and it's a budget in a moment of time, and this is essentially where we are. On March 24th, we considered a budget that was $70.696 million, or about 3.6% over FY21. We met 5 days later in a finance subcommittee, and at that finance subcommittee, we talked about roughly $612,000 in offsets. They included reducing the substitute line item by $175,000. As you might remember, it was $675,000. We brought it back down to $500,000 as it is this year. We reallocated curriculum line items in the tune of $175,000 and shifted those to the federal stimulus grants, which we'll see in just a moment. The vocational tuitions was decreased by $135,000 to accurately reflect the number of students going to Minuteman. We adjusted the salary line item by $50,000. We cut the 403 employer cost by $50,000. after we did a detailed financial analysis indicating that we weren't going to need $425,000, we would need $375,000. And then with Ms. Brigg and Ms. Young's help, we looked at the elementary school office and instructional supply line items. We essentially took the enrollment, put a $50 per capita for each student, came up with a product, and then said 30% will go into office supplies, 70% will go into instructional line items, and that allowed us to shave off roughly $27,000. That brought us, at that meeting on March 29th, to $70.083 million, which was a 2.7% increase, if you will. We met again on April 7th, the Finance Subcommittee, and we detailed some other offsets which actually increased the budget by almost $47,000. The two biggest, transferring or moving or shifting in 3 teachers from Title I to the FY22 budget, and a Title I paraprofessional into the FY22 SPED budget. We then looked at the sick leave buyback and realized that we could take $100,000 off of that with the number of retirements that we knew going in, which was 7, and then making an estimate on the early retirement incentive, which we now have 6, we'll still be able to keep that $100,000 off the budget. We then took the guidance curriculum coordinator for next year. I know that might change a little bit, but we decided to take 0.2 FTE salary and shift it to Title IV grant, which has always been done in the past. It just hadn't been reflected in the budget that you had seen. So we made that shift. The attendance officers, we took a portion of their salary, also putting it to Title IV. We met with Principal Callahan prior to April 7th and realized that there was $12,000 sitting in her budget that was already sitting in the technology budget for a library, so there was no need to have it double counted. We took the $12,000 out. We're not cutting the library by $12,000, we're just accurately reflecting it. And then we met with Mr. Quayle and Mr. Nelson and went over their line items. They have virtually the same enrollment. It's probably within 10 students. We looked at every single line item, and we evened it off, saving almost $6,700. So as you can see there, we put almost $47,000 back into the line item after April 7th, and we're at $70.130 million, which at that point would be a 2.77% increase. And I'm going to shift over to the budget, but that's how we have reconciled to this point. So here is the $70.130 million.
Can you make it slightly bigger?
Sure. Better?
Please, thank you.
There is the $70.13 million, and there is the roughly 2.77% increase. However, that's really not the, I shouldn't say it's not really the bottom line. That's the bottom line at this point. As you can see here, and you'll see in a more detailed chart that I will show you again, is that we're proposing to add $723,000 to that line item, which would really bring the total appropriation to $70.854 million, and a 3.83% increase over FY21. In terms of what we're calling the budget requests, you have seen this, not with the colors last time, but you've seen this chart before, and I will go over it, but I do want to get to the bottom. And here's how we have backed into that. We've tied into that $723,000 increase, and we're going to talk about ESSER II and the American Rescue Plan in just a moment. Going back up to the top, you can see in column A is essentially the cost center. Column B is a brief description of the expenditure. Column C is essentially what it will cost in FY22, and then in D, E, and F, we have placed it in the 3 buckets, whether it's going to hit the FY22 budget. Again, $723,000 of these budget requests will hit it. If it's going to hit ESSER II, or if it's going to hit the ARP, American Rescue Plan. Also on the side here, I've made notes that some things were added after 3/29, so that's after your March 24th school committee meeting and after your March 29th finance committee meeting. You probably saw it on your April 7th finance committee meeting. So as you can see, the top two, the curriculum line items that I referenced, roughly $175,000 coming out of the budget and into the ESSER 2 grant. We talked about bringing back a math coordinator, 6 to 12. That's actually not a cost because Assistant Superintendent-elect, who is young, her position per se will not be filled, and that money will be used for a curriculum math coordinator, so it's essentially a wash. We're proposing, as you saw last time, adding 2 instructional coaches K through 5. And I just want to note that the FY22 cost is roughly $131,000. But as you can see, we've reflected $143,000 because when we put that salary into a grant, we have to pay 9% of the additionally above the salary for retirement. So that's why we have reflected that accurately. We have a history coordinator that will hit the budget, and then we have a small monies for one content specialist to be a lead, which was new after 3/29, new after 3/29. And the summer enrichment program of $165,000 is will be an amazing program. Essentially, we're going to take what we have always done in the summer at the high school and expand it to all grades. We feel that the cost will be $165,000 to employ the necessary teachers, and students will be offered this service free. There will be no charge for that. And we propose to take it out of the American Rescue Plan. We have some monies in for summer curriculum work, and again, when we take a look at the curriculum purchases, you probably can't see it in the corner, but over the next year, we will be purchasing $1.279 million in curriculum through elementary and middle reading and math, which would probably take us most of 2 decades, if not a decade plus, and is really a generational game changer for us to do that. In the elementary section, as you have seen, we're proposing to add 2 assistant principals, one at the Malcolm White, one at the Goodyear, and also the interventionists that Dr. Crowley just referenced, 14 of them across the district at a cost of about $250,000, again hitting the ESSER 2 grant. In English language, once again, we're proposing increasing the director from a 0.5 to a 1.0, adding an elementary teacher and a secondary L teacher. As you can see, that hits the budget. Since we last met as a school committee, we've had additional meetings, and we feel as though we need to add a second secondary teacher, and we did that by using ESSER money, and once again, you can see the difference between the projected cost and what will actually be because of retirement. In terms of facilities, I think Mr. Dunkley has gone through all of this quite eloquently. I would just simply amplify the need for the feasibility study and indicate that this really, as I have said before, this really needs to be a conversation that also includes city officials. We certainly can't be doing this by ourselves. They have to be, they must be our partners in this. We have 10 buildings, and we have a lot of decisions to make on those 10 buildings in terms of the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and of course the outside envelope of the building also has to be maintained. The business decisions need to be made on the middle schools. We are sitting in a building now that is in excess of 50 years old, and the other middle school is approaching 60 years of age. As buildings get older, they cost more to maintain and to run and to update the various systems. The Linscott and the Alta Vista. Decision needs to be made if those are going to continue for the next decade, or will those be combined into a single school. The old Wyman, we've talked about that, to bring that back online. We really need to know what that cost would be. It most likely will be a significant cost to bring that back online for whatever purpose we want it. So we really need to know what that is in order to more effectively plan for the next 10 years. So that, when you're maintaining buildings, if you have a plan and it's prevention before care, essentially. So I just wanted to amplify that. We have included this in the capital improvement plan that we submitted to the mayor, so it is possible that some or all of this could be paid by the city. When we met with Mr. Coyley and Mr. Nelson, they asked to increase the band teacher from a 0.6 to a 1.0, and so that would be the increased cost, and as you can see, that was added after 329. In terms of technology, we've talked about previously expanding a current position, adding a middle school librarian, various supply and infrastructure upgrades and updates to maintain all of the technology that we've purchased in the past year. This item here, the $90,000, was at $83,000. We revised it twice today. And Ms. Junkins called me after 5 o'clock today and said that she had settled on $90,000. So it increased from 83 to 90, and that's why I put that note there. Her capital, which is also included in the mayor's capital improvement plan, is here and comes to approximately $249,000, which hopefully the city will pick up or pay in some format. Ms. Ryan did a wonderful job in outlining this for you, so I won't belabor that point. She does have, as Ms. Chisholm has asked, 16 positions. They are in the budget. More specifically, 8 of them are in the budget, and these 8 paraprofessionals are in the SR2 grant. In terms of student services, these were all added after 329. We have a number in here as a placeholder to increase the family liaison's compensation to be commensurate with her experience and other communities surrounding us. We've asked for a 0.5 FTE assistant to the family liaison. Dr. Baldessari has some contractual services that have lived in various line items in the past, and we're just trying to, in a concerted effort, try to get all of these contractual services and other expenses into one line item, and so this would be a wonderful bridge to use this grant money to move those into a permanent location. In terms of the high school, much of this has been added after 329. Increasing the French teacher from a 0.4 to a 1.0, increasing the fine and performing arts teacher from a 0.4 to a 1.0, adding a guidance department stipend. The Mass Insight Project, which is year 3 of a 3-year plan, would be in the American Rescue Plan. And after 4-7, we looked at the upgrading and enhancing the auditorium, which I understand has not been upgraded since the high school opened 15, 16, 17 years ago. So this would be a one-time upgrade of that facility, which would really increase the capacity and build capacity. I've also made a note here that we have put that into one of the grants. However, we will also look in paying this out of a revolving account, which has approximately $201,000 in it. So this expense here could easily be borne by that revolving account if things fall into place, and then that $90,000 would come back into that grant.
What revolving account?
I'm sorry?
What revolving account?
It is technically the theater.
Rental.
The rental revolving
Oh, okay.
account.
Okay.
Yes.
The rental of buildings, not fields, buildings.
I thought there was this mysterious revolving account that I never knew about.
And then-
Was that the reason?
And then finally, what you voted tonight to move forward with is the early retirement incentive, which I took a gamble and put it on here, that you would approve that. I think the exact number is $173,000 and change, so I rounded down to $172,000. As you can see, that comes right off the budget. So previously, that $732,000 was, in the neighborhood of $900,000. That has been reduced. So we talked about the $723,000, $951,000 in FY22 from ESSER, and $3.1 million in FY22 from the American Rescue Plan. We know that ESSER 2 is worth $1.960 million to us. We will most likely spend approximately $1 million of that in the current fiscal year to continue operations as they are, to fund the virtual academy and all of the increased expenses that have gone into this year. We will then have $951,500 projected to spend on FY22 expenses, which will essentially leave us with just under $9,000 in that grant. That will be available if we needed it in FY22, but also that will roll over into FY23. We know the ESSER 2 grant we can spend through September 30th, 2023, so we can spend it in FY22, 21, 22, 23, and the first quarter of FY24. The American Rescue Plan, we have conservatively budgeted or projected at $4.25 million. It might be slightly higher than that, but I like to figure conservatively because I don't want to spend money that we don't have. There'll be nothing from this fiscal year, $3.1 million as you've seen, and so that would leave us with $1.149 million if we needed it in FY22, and certainly we could roll that over into FY23. I saw on the business manager's listserv today that it seems that the American Rescue Plan we can spend until September 30th, 2024. So it will be 1 year more than ESSER 2, so that would, in theory, allow us to spend that through the first quarter of FY25 if there was anything left. So as you can see, you may not be able to see it, it's a little bit small in the corner there, but if we hit these projections, then we would have approximately $1,158,000 in federal stimulus monies that we could roll over to FY23. That would provide us a bridge to help afford some of the recurring charges that we have proposed to put in these grants, and to fund other things that may come up over the next fiscal year. So I think that's...
You didn't show the bottom line of the budget.
I'm sorry?
The bottom line after all this for the budget.
Well, what we would do is we would take, that's about $4 million, and then if we added that $4 million to here, it would be at about almost $75 million. I haven't calculated that out because $70.854 million is the Chapter 70 monies plus the local receipts. That would be the budget appropriation for the city of Woburn. The additional $4 million is federal stimulus monies that would technically stay off of that appropriation, but would be included in our budget document as an appendix, as we have spoken before about.
So there are other grants that were not reflected in there as well.
Yep.
So our ask for the city right now is 3.83%.
At
from the
this
city.
point, it would be, yes, it would be a 3.83% increase over last year.
Thank you, Ms. Delfinato. Okay. Want to take a breath for a minute? Okay. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Oh, capital improvement for Mr. Dunkley.
Yes.
Is that, you might have gone through it and I missed it. Is that in this?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I just missed it. Right here, his capital ask is the $600,000 for the feasibility study.
But, you know, what about improvements of the buildings and stuff like that? Don't we have any, you know, things that we need to do in the buildings? That's what I guess I'm looking for.
Yeah, he has line items. Some of them are reflected here in.
But I'm talking about projects that, you know, that normally wouldn't be in the line items that we need to get done. Is that reflected anywhere yet in our expenditures?
Well,
Let's say racing roofs somewhere, or
if
Yeah.
we needed to replace a roof,
yeah,
then right now that would be, we would have to go to the city in order to do that. Replacing a roof on one of our schools would be six figures. It would be four to
or
$700,000.
burnt boilers. Or any, always just think there's all these things that we have coming down the road, and I don't see that in the next 3 years in any of these expenditures of the money. That's what. Have we talked about that?
Which is why we really need that feasibility study,
Okay.
to give credence and lend legitimacy to the fact that when we indicate that we do need new boilers or a new roof at that school, that we have had professionals look at it and then we can plan for that.
I'm just worried that by the time the feasibility study's done, all that other money will be allocated to other causes that are just as good. But, you know, again, it's this idea that sometimes we put the buildings off. And so I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind. I know normally we have a wish list from the mayor, but I'm kind of thinking that this wish list for the mayor is he's going to say, you have all this money. Take care of your wish list with that money.
Well, if I may clarify as well, we added the feasibility study to the mayor's
Right.
capital improvement plan
Right.
for FY '22 to '26.
Yeah.
Prior to me getting here, there was a capital improvement plan for FY '21 through '25. In that plan, off the top of my head, I think there are 1 or 2 roofs that are planned over the next few years. Rooftop units, boilers at various schools. So that maintains.
Okay.
That stays there.
All right.
We're not sure if that will be funded. We've simply added that feasibility study so that we can really have a legitimate report that will say, in fact, we need all of this. The plan that the chair asked Mr. Dunkley to send, which I'm sure he will essentially lay that out, all of his requests for all of the schools for the next 5 or 6 years.
Right. But again, that's the kind of thing when you get this influx of money that's non-recurring costs and adds to the value and the stability of the system. So that's why I'm thinking about expenditures potentially of the money we're getting from the federal government to cover some of those things if the city's not going, going to pay for it. Okay. Well, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Lipset.
Just a couple questions. First, to follow up with Dr. Will's question, do we have a sense, and obviously it hasn't been either budgeted or contracted yet, but of what a timeline for the feasibility study would be? When would we be able to see a completed feasibility study theoretically?
Theoretically? Well, theoretically, on July 1, we'd have the monies to do that. We'd have to put it out for bid. There would be, in the procurement process, there would be certain advertisements that would have to make. So that would be 2 or 3 months before we could actually embark on that. I'm not entirely sure how the vendor who would win that job, how long they would need. I would imagine they would need several weeks, maybe a couple of months. And then hopefully, in theory, a best case scenario, next budget season would have a feasibility study that would be reported to us so that we could use that going forward. That's best case scenario, I think.
And that was sort of my question, given Dr. Will's concerns about, how are we budgeting this going forward? Would we have a clearer sense by next budget season for those appropriations?
Yeah.
The budget that we saw in the most recent subcommittee meeting had a slightly higher total to it. I'm guessing from what I'm seeing that the decrease is primarily the early retirement account. Were there any other adjustments in there?
Yes, the early retirement, the $172,000 is the only thing that has come off since you've last seen it.
And I just also want to add, my commendations for, I think it's everyone's dream to get money dropped on you, and we've had this, and I think what you're, Dr. Crowley, what you and your team have been able to do with it is, I think, potentially transformative in a lot of areas, and I'm really excited to see, the curriculums that we can purchase, the increases in staffing and supports in really critical areas. I'm legitimately excited about what I'm seeing here. So I'd like to thank you all for your work.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words, Mr. Lipset, and we are too. We have the ability to match up to the strategic plan that Dr. Crowley presented, and that return on investment will yield hopefully greater benefits over the next 1 to 2 fiscal years.
Mrs. Chisholm and then Ms. Courtney.
I have, so the budget that we have on the city side was $74 million roughly, and then $4 million, the money that's coming from the sky, that's what we're all going to get. It just makes me extremely nervous, because we always had the philosophy that we would never put in anything that's recurring into free money that we would get, because looking at it down the road, in 2 years, we'll have a base budget of about $84 million that we'll start with. So that scares the heck out of me to say that this is something that's going to, unless the federal government keeps printing money and shipping it out to everybody and expecting that to be something we can live on. So that makes me nervous. I'm thrilled that we're able to get these positions, and it's awesome, but it's just a water warning that we're not going to be able to handle this when the federal money dries up. I just think it's going to be scary. And with that being said, on the subline that we cut, was that because it wasn't needed this year? Is it just, we cut $175,000 from that?
Yep. So what we thought was that we were able this year to make $500,000 work in that substitute line item. So if we were able to make it work this year, we think that we can make it work next year.
Okay.
So that's,
with returning to school full-time and not being remote, because if we were remote, we really weren't having substitutes called in for extra help, or?
If ever we would need substitutes, it would have been this year, because of the coronavirus. But we feel as though that $500,000 will be enough
sufficient?
will be sufficient, yes,
Okay.
for next year. And I just wanted to say, in your previous comment, I thought you said $74 million. It's actually $70.854 million would be the school appropriation.
$70 million?
Yeah. So it would be, as you can see right there, it's $70.854 million.
Okay.
And then when we just under $71 million.
Okay.
And then when we add the $4 million in expenditures from the federal stimulus money, that's where we would be at the 74 plus almost 75 million.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if I heard you correctly,
Right.
but I just wanted.
And then the other grant that we have too is $1 million something?
Which grant is that?
The other ESS.
Yeah, the ESSER 2.
Yep.
1.9 million.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
so like
So the ESSER 2 and the American Rescue Plan.
All right,
are-
so we have roughly about $77 million budget that we're going to be having.
Well, ESSER's being
Yeah.
used this year, though,
Right.
in FY '21.
Yes.
Yeah.
Approximately half of the ESSER 2 will be used this
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anything, and I'm projecting $1 million to be used this year.
Right.
Perhaps it won't be that high, maybe it's 850,000, and so that 150,000 would roll back, would roll over.
Okay.
And so rather than having 1.1 million and change, would have, closer to $1.3 million to roll into FY '23. And as I said, that would allow us the ability, the bridge, to move some of those recurring charges
Back
into
into
the FY '23 budget. The good thing, if you will, is we have a year notice to work on getting those monies back into the budget. It's not going to be like next spring, we say, oh geez, all of this has popped up and we need to bring it back into FY23. I'm not going to stop, once the FY22 budget's passed, it's almost immediately on to FY23. And my biggest task for FY23 is going to be looking at those recurring charges and determining how wide or how strong will the bridge be to get those back into the budget in terms of how much money on the federal grants will I have.
Okay.
So we do have a runway, so to speak. But I absolutely understand what you're saying from a fiscally conservative perspective, which I share, in that we want to make sure that we're living within our means and able to meet our obligations to not only our students, our staff, and our families.
I mean, because I think it's great that we're able to do this and support the teachers with the extra help that they need with the paras in the classroom and all that. I just always came from the philosophy that if you don't have it, you don't spend it. Gifts only come in packages that sometimes are empty when you open them. So I just get a little nervous with that, especially the way the federal government is throwing money around. It's just making me crazy. But I do want to make a recommendation through here that we just send the substitute issue to personnel or to finance just to relook at that. I know there's no change when we have substitutes that maybe have worked for us for a year or 2 or 3 years, become a steady person, but they still get the same as someone that starts right away. So maybe we can adjust something like that. But we can look at that through finance and personnel.
Okay. Do you want to take it to finance, or do you want me to send it to Mike?
No.
Finance.
We can go to
Finance, okay. Thank you, Ms. Chisholm. Thank you for raising the points that you did. I think it's important. Does the administration want to respond any more about sustaining costs, or because that's kind of an important point, but I think Mr. Alcanada responded.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Cormier.
Thank you. Actually, Ms. Chisholm sort of stole my question. So my question was basically with the ESSER only being a sort of one-time, a short-lived, is there a difference in how you decide what is put on that, and then what would the plan going forward be? So I guess that's basically been answered.
So that I understand, like, what we decided was going on ESSER 2 as opposed to the American Rescue Plan?
Or the budget.
What's that?
Or the budget.
Or the budget.
Was there any wiggle room there, any options?
Yeah, so I think with the curriculum, for example, which was $1.279 million, that we clearly decided that we would put that on a grant because the budget could never withstand that. We made every attempt to put as many salaries as we could in the budget. So like for instance, you saw that most of the special ed was in the budget. A lot of the EL was in the budget. It just got to the point where the extras, the extra secondary L teacher, the paraprofessionals, we just couldn't get that into the budget. So that's why the federal stimulus grants were a lifesaver to allow us to do that.
You're just looking at, obviously, the assistant principals, which are very important, and all of it, with all of these positions, and I just want to make sure that they were supported going forward, too.
Yes, without question.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, getting back to space, we've added these people. Do we have space in the building for these people to settle in and do their jobs? I know some can work in the classroom with teachers, but I assume some need additional spaces. We evaluated the space situation to make sure.
As far as I know, Dr. Wells, we will have the space to bring these new positions on, from the assistant principals to the interventionists to the SPED teachers. I think Ms.
About
Ryan,
the EL,
Yes.
the additional EL will have
Yeah.
classrooms
Yeah,
for them and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
space, the final frontier.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Huckabee, Bob. In years past, there was always a line item under legal fees. Is it missing or not there this time? We're just not going to hire any lawyers?
Yep, we have in the central office administration.
We just haven't got the whole thing.
Okay.
We have a legal line item there.
Yeah.
All right. And I think I emailed you about any administrators that are up for contract renewals, and is that reflected in here as well, or is that coming up?
Yes,
salary?
all administrators that are up for contracts, I have presumed that they will be renewed, and they are reflected here based on the contractual language that they have currently. I know that ends on June 30th, but I have projected going forward that their similar contractual language will apply in the new fiscal year.
And I guess to Dr. B, we have people in virtual academy that are they going to tell you that they want to come back in person? Are they going to try to homeschool themselves? Is there deadlines for that? Are you going to account for that kind of return?
That's already happened. The first return obviously was April 5th. There's another one on May 3rd. And we hope that, a lot of our homeschool students will come back, and we hope that some of our students that went to private schools will come back. Some outreach is taking place already.
Okay.
And it's going to be ongoing.
And again, how many, I know you probably told us at the last meeting, but how many went from virtual and now elementary returned? How many?
92.
What's that?
92.
92. And are you getting a feel or surveys back from those at middle and high school that are going to go into full-time again?
That I turned to Wendy.
Yeah,
Oh,
it wasn't
okay.
a huge shift at that level. There was some, but it wasn't as anywhere near the
No.
number that we saw
All right.
at the elementary level.
Be interesting to see that, Cool. All
Well,
right.
the overall number was also small in both those groups to begin with.
Thank you, Ms. Maureen.
Thank you.
Anything else? To the administration, could someone just elaborate a little bit on how a student's education program might change with the addition of a coach, the coaches and the interventionists, and how it will improve? Just so parents that are listening can say, oh, wow, it's going to be really great.
Sure.
So the idea behind the coach is to improve instructional practices for all of our teachers, as well as improve our curriculum and further align it as it needs to be and work on implementation of our new programming. So all of that coming together should have a tremendous impact, especially over time. The second part of your question.
The interventionist, sort of what can we expect students to have?
So not unlike what we had prior to the pandemic with the WIN block and having interventionists available to work under the content specialists and in collaboration with classroom teachers to be able to do small group instruction after data has indicated the needs of students and that they're willing appropriately to address those needs.
And if I remember correctly, the coach is a more experienced teacher, but not a supervisor to the teacher, more of a peer.
Yes, and our current coaches have gone to a number of trainings to help enhance their practice themselves, and they're still ongoing. I just, as a matter of fact, signed them up today for another training in May.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, with regard to technology, I think in 2019, 2020, we had an idea of how technology was going to be used and so forth. Now we've gone, and the students have been using it at home and so forth. And have we shifted how we think technology is going to be used? Because the students are used to using it, all day, all the time. Now they're coming back to a classroom, and there may be some disconnect. And how we're going back to what we thought we were going to use technology, or we're going to do a hybrid, or what's the thought with technology?
So that'll be part of the role of the coaches as well,
Yeah.
and the curriculum coordinators as they come on board to help support students and teachers embed the technology with them
Right.
to the everyday instruction.
Yeah. I just think we have to, think a little bit about it, because I think previously we had an idea, this is how we can use technology, and then all the students have been using it at home. And so we don't want to have, it's like when we used to teach the kids how to type after they've been using a keyboard, for 6 years. So the same idea, we don't want to hold the students back in the use of technology, because we're geared to how we think technology should be used. So it should be.
Dr. Crowley's point that he made earlier,
Yeah.
we made such an advance so suddenly.
Right.
We don't want to just let that go
Right,
by the wayside.
right.
And there's been a lot of discussions,
Okay.
including Ms. Judkins and the
Okay.
coordinators and Ms. Shaw.
So one of the things I think we're thinking about doing is, even this spring, is identifying
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work. To go back to the way things were
Right.
isn't probably a good idea, given
Right.
the skill set that not only the kids, but the
The
staff
teachers,
now
right.
have as
Yeah.
well. So let's capitalize
Yeah.
on that.
Okay,
you know?
good.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Okay. Ms. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general comment. I see the website for the Mass School Building Authority is asking for letters of intent, so just like the publicly asked that the superintendent maybe look into that again. Obviously, we have needs in our facilities, and there's been talk about what we're going to do next for our buildings. So I see the MSBA looking for letters of intent, so if you could add that to your next agenda item, perhaps when you meet with the mayor, and see where that takes us.
Madam Chairman, but shouldn't we do the feasibility?
Well,
Yeah.
if there's deadlines for the MSBA, I just want to make sure we follow the path.
All right, well, it sounds like we disagree on that, so do you want to make a motion, Mr. Mulrennan?
No, I'm just suggesting that at least we look into where the MSBA is and where it falls for Woburn. I don't want to interfere with the capital feasibility study. Sure, that should go forward,
Okay.
as it has done in the past. We've done lots of those and still move forward with the building authority to commence building new buildings. So it was, even some of the,
I always thought we had the feasibility plan, and then we went to the MSBA.
we still have an overlapping plan, and we haven't even, all the items haven't been checked off yet from previous feasibilities.
We have to know what we want to build before we want to build it. So we,
If we get the okay, then
Yeah.
we'll go forward, but I think it's worth looking into anyway before we lose out in the next round. Thank
Yes.
you.
Are you going to, when are you going
I have a question,
to, okay.
once Mr. Mulrennan is
I'm
Okay,
done.
so let's, what are we doing at the MSBA? Are we
Just bring it up as
inviting-
a topic of discussion at the next.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So
I know where it
the
falls.
superintendent will advise the
Yeah.
school committee about that issue. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Cormier.
Yes, and just when we were talking about back to school on another of Mr. Mulrennan's questions, you mentioned obviously April 5th and then May 3rd?
Yeah.
What is May 3rd? I don't,
There was my understanding was there was a date that the students returned. The students would get settled in their classrooms, and then if there were applications that came in later, that the second return date would be May
oh,
3rd.
okay, I didn't realize there was a second wave. Thank you.
So in terms of next steps, this is, it seems like maybe this is nailing a final work product, Mr. Alcanada, for the school committee to consider.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Ms. McKinnon and I will, over the next couple of days, go through, we're at the process, in the budget process, where we'll do a quality assurance and make sure that all of our numbers add up, make sure that all of the figures are correct. I don't foresee that bottom line swinging significantly either way. So,
Okay.
yes, I feel as though we are approaching the finish line.
All right, and the school committee has received this, correct, this document?
This document?
No, not this one. Right.
Not this one,
Previous
but
one, okay.
they can and they will.
Okay.
Because we have obviously made changes right through today.
Okay, so we can receive this tomorrow.
Tomorrow I can send a copy.
And is the school committee ready to vote and have a public hearing on this on the 27th?
Well, we can't-
City council, the mayor needs it.
We need to present it to the mayor by May 1st.
May
We need a final version from the administration.
It seems like.
No, that's not, we need the final everything,
all the listings,
all the listing.
Yes, yes.
like our books.
Not a book, but electronic book, I
Right.
They're
guess.
at the bottom.
Okay.
It's here.
All the
Yeah.
tabs are
Right,
up.
but
No,
it's
but-
not quite like, I just want, when it's finished.
Sorry,
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah.
Alcanada is doing a quality control
Like in a
check.
PDF.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so the school committee is going to receive this,
Yeah.
yep.
and then the school committee is going to receive a final version. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So-
the school committee will receive this.
Okay.
If there are any changes whatsoever, we'll update that with a new version, if you will. I don't foresee any drastic swings.
Okay. So my question stands, is the
Yeah.
school committee ready to do this on the 27th, public hearing and approve, or does it feel it
Well,
needs?
we need to have a version be released to the public before we have our public hearing.
Absolutely. So we
So-
could do that on the 25th, 48 hours before the public hearing, of course. So do you feel like the school committee needs to see it before it's released to
We
the
have to
public?
approve it before we can put it out.
Got it. Okay, so then we need a meeting before the 27th. So we have a meeting to approve the budget, then have a public hearing on it on the 27th, is that right?
Right.
Madam Chair, does the mayor, is that his drop deadline for Friday, April 30th again this year? I know he's extended in the past for different departments, if we can get a confirmation on that. I don't know.
It's usually May 1st.
I know, but May 1st is a Saturday with COVID, with everybody's budgets being in limbo, I don't know.
If we wanted to have 2 meetings on that week,
Yeah.
that last week of April, I'm sure he would be okay with
The 27th is what?
I don't presume to speak
Tuesday.
for him,
Right,
but
I just didn't know if you've spoken to him yet, if he's still sticking to which is actually Friday, April 30th.
The ideal thing would be to have one the week before, approve it, have it sit over at the library
Yes.
and every place for 3 days, and then have the public hearing like the beginning of, maybe the 27th.
Yes.
That would mean next week we'd have to have a meeting, that's school
it's
vacation.
vacation week, that's
Yeah.
right.
So, but the 27th is what day of the week?
Tuesday.
Night.
Okay, so we could have a meeting on the 28th, and we could have the public hearing on that Monday.
26th.
No, you have to, you have to have it for, isn't it 72
No,
hours?
it's 48 hours.
The meeting posting.
No, but I'm talking about how.
48 hours.
How
The public budget, 48 hours.
But if we met on the 26th and then you'd have to put it, we couldn't vote on the 28th.
Is
because it wouldn't
26th
go.
a Monday?
26th
We
is
could
a
do
Monday.
26, 29.
Oh, and then the 29th, so we'd meet on the 29th?
So Monday and Thursday.
Yes.
Okay.
Works for me.
Yeah.
So do you want to meet on the 26th just to approve the budget?
Yes.
And then we can go, and then we can meet on the 29th for a
Yes.
public hearing?
Yes.
Instead of the 27th.
And so we'll just redo, yeah,
Or maybe
So
have
shift
the,
the
have the regular meeting on the 26th,
yeah.
approve the budget at that meeting,
Yes.
and the public hearing, that's
How
an
about on the
hour.
29th?
Yeah, we could
Okay.
just meet, if nobody's here, then end.
Yes.
Go home.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So we got
So,
to change the
just
date.
to correct the confusion to the administration, we need to, before we publish the budget for the public hearing, we need to approve it.
Right.
So when we were talking, I neglected that. So is that okay? 26th, 29th?
Yeah.
All right, great.
Sure, we got to vote on it.
So, yeah, why don't we make a motion that we meet change our school committee meetings to the 26th at 7, and then the 29th at 7?
We're adding-
7:30?
We're adding those
That's fine.
two, and then we'll eliminate the 27th.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
7 on the Monday,
Yeah.
7 PM,
I could do 7 on the Monday.
Okay.
and 7 on Thursday,
Could we-
the 29th.
All in
7
favor?
again.
Aye.
Yeah. I'm fine with 7. I can make 7 work.
Okay, so,
What's the 29th?
final budget, school committee, April 26th.
Get this done.
Public hearing, April 29th. Now, question for the school committee members. Do you want Chromebooks? So you can look at the budget as the administration is speaking to you, because the superintendent came up with a plan that he could lend you Chromebooks to manipulate during the meeting. And
Yes,
what do you,
because I can't do it on this.
okay, what do you think?
Yeah.
So if I can
Yes.
We can-
add to that,
Yeah.
It'll cost you.
the idea is to, any member that wants a Chromebook, we have them available.
Yeah.
We also have a world-class Google educator downstairs to train you in how to use the Chromebook. So if you're not comfortable navigating it, I can make an arrangement with Ms. Judkins to do an hour training to make sure that people are comfortable utilizing it. You can, if that's something of interest, maybe just let Ms. Crowley know, and then I'll coordinate with everybody. And it just seems like it might be a good way. I mean, given the shift that we just talked about with the kids and the teachers,
Yeah.
for us to do it, and not only for budget, but potentially as so we can reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay. Sounds like a
Thank
plan.
you. Okay. Subcommittee reports. Who has minutes?
Madam
Maureen?
Chairman, Finance Subcommittee.
Finance, okay.
Met as part of the subcommittee as a whole on April 7th at 6:30. President was the chairperson, Mrs. Chisholm, myself, and Mr. Lipset as members of the subcommittee. Also present were yourself, Mr. Mulrennan, and
Mr. Kissel.
Mr. Kissel was remote. The administration presented their budget as of 4/7. We reviewed that. We had multiple discussions, essentially what Mr. Alconda just went over, and I could go on and on, but to save time, we essentially discussed the same things that we discussed this evening, and we had a hearty discussion about how to present the budget and issues about the budget, and the committee felt that all the questions were answered.
Thank you, Dr. Wells.
We have no bills and no balance of accounts this time.
Okay.
After the budget, we'll do those.
We put a hold on Bill.
Yeah.
And do you want to table the minutes from 3:31?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Curriculum and data trends, Mr. Lipset?
We have nothing.
Okay. And personnel?
Meeting
Mike?
this week on Thursday afternoon, 4 PM here at the Joyce.
Fabulous. Policy, Mr. Kissel?
We're working on a meeting coming up, probably within a couple of weeks, on a couple of new policies.
Okay, great.
Madam Chairman, could we send that request about the dress code and the
Yes.
policy to policy subcommittee so they could review the letter from a constituent?
Thank you. Constituent
Already
Megan
received,
Chapman.
Dr. Wells.
Yeah.
Megan Chapman
Yeah.
addressed the school committee asking us to review dress code policies. So that will go to policy. Thank you. Save some time. Resources did not meet, Dr. Wells, right?
No.
And SSA.
Yes, we met on Thursday, April 1st at the Joyce Middle School. In attendance were myself, Mr. Kissel, Mr. Mulrennan, Dr. Baldessari, Ms. Ryan, and Julie Cotton from CPAC. For a SPED update, there was a number of professional development opportunities that Ms. Ryan presented. Wilson Level 1, Sarah Ward, Bonnie Singer, Brain Freens, Bravo, Just Words, Linda Mood Bell, Visualizing, Verbalizing, and various others, and increasing the AAC Touch Chat training. Spoke of the budget, said we're in a good place this year and optimistic for next year. She says the financial analyst has been a huge help in tracking expenses week to week, figure out what we're spending and what we need. She's expecting a spike in out-of-district placements due to the return to in-person upcoming. And there's a lot of catch-up to do related to staffing. Obviously, she presented on that today. She, at the time, was 4 days before the full return to school, but was trying to be proactive for any issues that may arise and had some schedules and services being realigned, and of course was prioritizing safety. The extended school year planning is coming along. Looks like we'll be in great shape for the fall. There were a few questions about if educators are be able to make their own decision on which of the professional development programs to use, or if there was sort of a step-by-step, and she said that the educators have the ability to do what they feel is best for the situation. Student services update, the YMCA and Boys Club staff were coming into school on April 5th. The Equity and Access Advisory Council met on March 12th to finalize the council framework. And Dr. Baldessari and Ms. Mendez-Sheldon consulted with Karen Knoop, the executive director of the Harvard Business School, to review the framework, which will be ready for dissemination soon. Dr. Baldessari?
Yeah, we just have to get through it.
The YRBS, new this year, was translated into Portuguese, previously just English and Spanish, awaiting the final questionnaire links, and planned to be administered before April break. The Embrace had a meeting with Dr. Baldessari on March 19th. There was a video project that the students are going to be creating for their teachers, or for any teachers that want to see, basically sort of autobiographical with things that they need to know, they should know, a lot of cultural things and a lot of good specific teach student. So that permission slip is finalized and sent, and Embrace will be translating and disseminating that. The TCIS recertification for trainers, there was a 3-day training at the end of March. District trainers will attend a 2-day training August 10th and 11th. The Lion's Den, which is a new clothing closet at the Goodyear Elementary School, began at the beginning of March and organized by Christina Santorelli, Gaines social worker, James D'Andrea, the Goodyear adjustment counselor, and Principal Kenny Casares. The Ruler systematic approach to social emotional learning, evidence-based. This is another program we're thinking about using post-pandemic. There's a link to that in my minutes. Interface situational report, providers who are full doing to returning clients. There's decreasing caseload, so there are some issues with providers being available for the people who are looking to utilize the interface. There was a video created, supporting the social and emotional needs of children and youth by Woburn Public Schools clinicians, for sort of a social emotional toolbox for the parents for return to school. They were sent to all the families on March 30th. And on that first day, there were 677 hits. The Family Needs COVID Tracker is continuing to be updated, 860 entries and engagements as of 3/31. There were parent trainings on the Plus portals, 4 Zoom sessions, English, Portuguese, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. 35 participants attended. The were recorded sessions, and training reference manuals were also created in those languages and are now available. There was an LPAC meeting on 3/30 with 24 attendees. Family Central monthly newsletters have been going out with about 6,000 views between the two. Dr. Baldessari met with Dennis Clark to discuss how Cummings Properties and WPS could work together, and Mr. Clark donated $5,000 in...
Adriana.
I'm sorry?
Adriana.
Oh, she met with?
Yeah, Adriana.
Yes.
I just talked to him on the phone.
Ms. Mendez-Sheldon met and used her magic and ended up with $5,000, which were used for Market Basket gift cards for families in need. Ms. Mendez-Sheldon was also accepted to the DOE Kaleidoscope Collaborative for Learning Council, which advises the Collective for Learning on examining program tools, resources, and strategies. And she was also invited to and accepted a seat on the Winchester Hospital Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. Under guidance and counseling, course elections were started. Of course, Ms. Frondudo had mentioned that. Ms. Donovan met with the MEFA representative on new college and career curriculum to replace Naviance. SATs, of course, were held. Under English language learners, access testing to take place until May 20th. Teachers have tested most of the hybrid EL students are working on the virtual academy students to complete the tests on Wednesdays when the buildings were closed. And these scores will be delivered by the start of the 2021-2022 school year to help make appropriate placements and instruction decisions for our ELs, as well as identifying which are former English learners. Cohort D, at the time, very happy to come back to school, 4 days a week. EL summer school proposal. 3 teachers have been selected for these positions. It'll be funded through Title III, and working on students to sign up according to the WIDA levels and grades. Finalizing details for the new translation policy. Creating guidelines and tasks protocols for identifying pre-K English learner students. And we are onboarding a new EL paraprofessional at the Malcolm White. She's actually probably just started.
Yep.
Let's see, there's an MATSOL conference June 1st through 4th, remote for the EL teachers. Ms. Cooper attended a dropout prevention convening on 3/22 in order to help support the efforts for decreasing EL dropout rates. And for CPAC update, they met on March 3rd with Rosemary Donovan and Suzanne Carter of the Threshold Program at Leslie College. On 3/31, they had the college fair where 12 universities were represented. And the next meeting is tomorrow, 4/14 at 6:30 p.m. with representatives from the Woburn Commission for Handicapped and Disabled. Tim Donovan and Joseph Flaherty will be available to discuss what the commission has been doing and answer questions for the parents. And we adjourned at 10:31 a.m.
Okay, any questions for Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee?
Just taking the lead from finance as the hardest working subcommittee.
Okay, future agenda items, we'll have the athletic director, and you can just email me your topics. Correspondence, again, the aforementioned Megan Chapman. We had a correspondence from Rita Mazur about adopting a resolution to eliminate MCAS, and we had a email from Stephanie McCann, which I did not yet send to you because I thought it was a repeat from before, but it's the same issue that had come up before about Ms. McCann requesting a before-school program at the Linscott. That's all I have for correspondence. Mr. Kissel.
I think we all got the MASC bulletin and the book, and I think Mike had commented about the Boys Club and YMCA potential, some award and so on. But there's also, it is going to be live, a hybrid actually, live and online. So just looking at the delegate this year, I will be going down there anyways. So we can open it up to discussion at maybe one of the next meetings to get the ball rolling.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kissel. Anything else for correspondence? Seeing none, okay. We do have an executive session. I will announce that we are, accept a motion to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel. And also, we are discussing a union issue with a non-WTA issue, I believe, cafeteria workers.
SEIU.
SEIU union.
I make a motion, we go into executive session.
Second.
Okay, we need a roll call vote?
Yes, 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 yes.
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Yes.
Mr. Kissel.
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes, so we have a unanimous vote to go into executive session, so we could close the doors. And Dr. Crowley can decide which administrators.
Yeah, I'm going to ask, you can recuse.